Average human has 50 trillion cells in their body, so a total of 9 zeros. It's 1,000 plus 2 sets of zeros, and a trillion has 3 sets of zeros. If you learn to count in Latin, you can count as high as you care to go. Million for mono, billion for bi, like a bicycle has 2 wheels, trillion for tricycle, like 3 wheels, quadrillion would be next, like a quad runner or something with 4-wheel drive, quadratraction for the Jeep. And then quintillion would be 5 sets of zeros plus the original 1,000. And then sextillion, septillion, octillion, novillion, decillion. And who cares, right? Anyway, so a trillion cells is an awfully lot of cells. When you figure the entire population of the planet is nowhere close to this number. There are only about 6 billion people in the world. This is 50,000 billion cells in your body. Each one of those cells contains a little nucleus in the center, and the vast majority have 46 chromosomes. A few have 23, the gametes do. If you took all the DNA out of one person, it would fill about 2 tablespoons. Teaspoons are the small ones, tablespoons are the big ones. It would fill 2 tablespoons with just pure DNA. If you took one chromosome from every individual on the planet, and this chromosome, each chromosome contains the blueprint, the instructions for how to build the entire person. So if you had one chromosome from each person on the planet, theoretically you could make every person again. You have the information to make a new Becky or a new Steve or a new Eric or whoever, okay, from one chromosome. All of that information, 5 billion or 6 billion chromosomes, would be about the size of an aspirin. That's the information capable of making every human being again on the planet. That's with our current understanding. We may discover later that even this is mostly space and it could be condensed even smaller than that. Just unbelievably complicated. Now, if you unwound each one of those chromosomes, number 46 in each cell, each one is about 6 or 7 feet long. So you get 6 or 7 feet times 46 times 50 trillion. One person's chromosomes would stretch from Earth to the Moon and back. Round trips, 5 million round trips to the Moon. And keep in mind, that is like a twisted ladder. Now, to make it even more interesting, if we had our ladder from here to Chicago, and we twisted it and twisted it and twisted it, and as you, like you do a rubber band, you get it tighter and tighter, pretty soon it starts to double knot. You know, it starts to loop again. Okay? Similar idea. We're going to take this long ladder from here to Chicago and split it all the way down the middle. Each one of the rungs of the ladder is going to be cut in half. All the way from here to Chicago. While it's twisted, it is going to unwind from the other half. So we have 2 half ladders. That's going to join up with the other half ladder from your husband or wife, wind itself back together from here to Chicago, and make a child. Each half of the rung is a genetic trait. Maybe the dad supplies the half of the rung for blonde hair and the wife supplies the half of the rung for brown hair. Well, which one's the baby going to have? Well, that gets into which one of these genes is more dominant. There are dominant and recessive genes. The baby might end up with blonde hair, but capable of producing a brown-haired child. Because even though what expressed itself in that generation was blonde hair, they are carrying the gene, the half rung of the ladder, for brown hair. So then the grandkids come out with brown hair, or depending on who they marry. And that's a very interesting study. You get into that in biology class, studying all the, what can happen when you cross different genes together. Incredibly complicated. Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, he said, DNA is like a software program, but it's much more complex than anything we've been able to design. Now, when they design a software program, how frequently do they encounter a glitch or a problem? Do any of you work with computers at all? You ever seen a computer have a glitch where the program doesn't work? All the time, right? You ever seen a photocopy of a piece of paper where somebody copied an article, and somebody else said, wow, this is good, I'm going to make a copy of this. So they copy the copy. Then this person says, wow, that's really good, I'm going to copy that. So they copy the copy of the copy. After about 8 or 10 copies, you can't hardly read it. We are a copy, off of a copy, off of a copy, off 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 a copy of Adam. Realize how many times this gene code has been duplicated? And still working pretty good. The original must have been awesome to have this number of generations of copies still working at all, you know. So, to say DNA is small and therefore it must be simple is absolutely ridiculous, okay? It is unbelievably complicated. A DNA has 4 base pairs. What they've done is they've taken each of these genes and they've taken a whole cluster of molecules and call it a base pair. Like they give it a letter A. So they will say, well, DNA is very simple. There are only 4 base pairs. Well, hold it. That's like me saying, you know, vehicles on the highway are very simple. There's only 4 basic kinds. You know, there's trucks, there's cars, there's motorcycles, and there's buses. Well, just because I can put them into 4 simple categories doesn't mean each one is simple. A car is complicated. How many things would have to be wrong to make a car quit working? Any one of thousands of things. Can you imagine all the neat things you could do to cause an engine to not run, to give somebody a hard time? You take the distributor cap off, take a pencil, draw a few lines around there, put it back on. Graphite conducts electricity. So as soon as it tries to spark to one spark plug, the spark goes to all spark plugs. So it follows the graphite around the inside. Very simple. Car won't run. When you think how the more complex something becomes, the easier it is for something to break down. Look at our space shuttle. You know, we had one blow up. One little O-ring. Out of X number of zillion parts on that thing, one part went wrong. And it's usually something different every time. If you typed out the genetic code found in the chromosomes of one person, when you got done typing, you'd have enough books to fill Grand Canyon 40 times. An incredible amount of information. You realize how many bits of information are required to make a hair? You ever look at a hair under a microscope, you say, man, that thing's unbelievably complex. Now, how does the hair on your arm know to grow a certain distance and stop? But the hair on your chin just keeps growing. How do it know? And then, if you get a cut, you cut your arm right across a hair follicle, how does the skin cell know, when it fixes the damage, if it's going to make, you know, which kind of skin cell is it supposed to, make to repair the damage? The information contained in the chromosomes is incredibly complicated. Oh, King David said in Psalm 139 many years ago, he said, I will praise thee, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. He didn't even have a microscope, and he knew you ought to praise God. The body is incredibly complicated. So I get nervous when these folks say, well, the body, DNA is very simple. Well, they don't know what they're talking about. DNA is complicated.